Hello, hello, hello. That was my fault, just so it's super clear.
It's fine. It's not a problem. It's what do you expect? It's fucking. It's one of those things. I have a lot of business meetings on Zoom and Microsoft Teams, and I think I'm still stunned that we went through a few years of literally everyone having to use internet communication, and somehow nothing got fixed or made better. Very frustrating. How are you doing?
I'm pretty okay. I had to cancel my shelter today. I went to a shelter yesterday to help animals build their little houses out of wood
Okay.
because there are animals on the front line. They were evacuated from the front line. They were traumatized by the war. They were put in a shelter and they need help. I'm gonna send you a photo. Because only a few of the dogs were friendly. Most of them were sort of stressed out, let's just say, and they were sort of jumping
Oh,
around
I can
their
only
little
imagine.
pens. Yeah, but there were a
I can
few
only
dogs
imagine.
that were really friendly, like this one that I'm sending to you right now via the chat. Where's the?
Mm-hmm.
How do I? How do I separate the?
There it is.
Yeah, that's the
Oh.
very uh, starved for affection. This one.
Mhm.
You can sort of see it on the
Dogs are
photo.
dogs will break your heart. They will
Yeah.
break your heart. There's nothing like I've always had rescues. I've done rehabilitation. It's a lot, and it takes a lot out of you. But it's good work. It's just god damn.
I think that it might be a lot of work to get a dog from a position uh, when the dog is being violent after a bad experience, like the front lines. My dog
Well,
was abused by his former owners, but he wasn't aggressive. He was just scared a lot of the time. He was very big, but also very meek and scary. And he developed some very particular habits because he lived in a very small apartment before we had him, right? And there was only one place where he could be. It was between a wall and a fridge. He would turn around
mm,
and walk into that little space backwards, right?
Christ. Oh,
Yes. We lived on the
oh
10th
no, it's
floor.
heartbreaking.
Yeah,
It's heartbreaking.
we lived on the 10th floor. So when we had him, he developed this thing that when I would take him to the elevator, he would turn around and walk into the elevator backwards. It was one
My
of those. Yeah.
Dottie, my little, my current little terrier, fox terrier, she was a rescue, and she couldn't go on walks. She wouldn't leave the door. She wouldn't move. It was awful. One time, we finally got her to go on a walk, and someone left an umbrella out on their yard, and that was it.
Hmm.
That was it. She couldn't move. She was terrified. Unbelievable.
Interesting. Well, whenever all of us left, he'd feel abandoned and howl. When we took him on vacation and we would rent the house, when we'd leave him in the house, he would start howling because he'd feel abandoned. And also, he was afraid of stairs. He would not be able to walk on stairs. Yes, but he was very smart. Sometimes when I called him and he didn't want to come, he would raise his leg and pretend to pee, not to come to me. So yeah, that was the dog that I had years ago.
Mhm. Well, it's good work. Someone needs to be doing it. Jesus. But I'm calling uh, because yesterday on your stream, I know you and a couple of your chatters got a little bit into it, and I wanted to talk through it because I think some of the language used um, came across wrong. Is how I'm going to put it. I
Right,
don't know if that does that make sense?
it
Because
does. It feels like a case of miscommunication, maybe.
yeah, well, talking past each other because it's especially when it's I mean, English is not a first language, and also on top of it when it's text to voice and vice versa, like things get fucked up. So I'm going
Yeah.
to make a statement, and then we're going to talk through it, and we're going to see if you disagree with it and how much and why.
All right.
'Cause I don't think you do when I get to the end of it. I think you're going to disagree with the beginning, though, for fucking sure. I think you're going to disagree with the beginning, though, for sure.
All right.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right. Russia is utilizing excessive conscription of troops. Ukraine is using conscription for troops as well.
Yes.
Conscription of troops is not a good thing. In fact, conscription in general, being forced to fight or even pushed or coerced in any way, is not a good thing.
I
However-
actually agree. Yeah.
Yeah. And Ukraine doing any sort of conscription is not a good thing. But it's not on Ukraine from an ethical or blame position any more than I could say the same thing where I'm saying it's not okay to kill Russians. Like, it's bad to kill Russians. That's not cool. It's bad to kill people.
Yeah.
However, when an army invades and you fight back and you kill a few of them, it isn't on you that morality or that ethical rule is being broken. It's on the person who forced the position. I only have so much power myself, and unless I'm willing to allow myself to die or my space to be invaded or taken over, there's only so much I can do. This is more like
Yes.
marbles hitting marbles, and whoever threw
Yes.
that first marble won ultimately is
So,
blamed.
so the
Generally,
thing,
are you in
yeah.
agreement?
Yeah, I'm in agreement. It's like with the
So-
conscription, what I usually say is conscription is not good, but I would choose conscription in the case of Ukraine over having another Izium, Bucha, or Irpin, for example, happen.
Right, and I think this is the language that definitely got missed yesterday, because I was pretty sure I knew your position on this, and it turns out I was right. It didn't come across that it's okay if Ukraine's doing it.
Well, it's
it's-
necessary, is
it-
what I would say.
It's necessary, right? It's necessary because of what Russia's doing.
Yes, because of the
But
invasion.
If the war ended tomorrow and Russia backed off and it was done, if Ukraine kept conscripting, that would be bad.
Then no, I would be in favor of people dodging it via going to university like I did.
So
Yes.
that's, I think, and I don't want to go over like wording or any of that, because I don't like revisiting things.
Yes.
This is where the miscommunication happened in the chat, and it was
Yes.
tough because I think it's one of the things that it's tough to do, tough not to do.
The whole conversation sort of started when I was talking about children being sort of groomed into, in a very specific way, kidnapped children, groomed into military service into the Russian army. It's being done in a very specific way. And one of the chatters say, oh, everybody does it. To which I say, no. And there's a sort of a difference between glorifying the military, because I guess in some countries there is this sort of glorifying the military, but Russia does it. Well, first of all, it does it to kidnap children, which makes it a very different situation to begin with. But it does it in a far more sinister way, so to speak. Like, I don't think in the US there's a situation in which teachers teach children at the age of 14, 15, that actually, or maybe younger, that actually death is not something that's bad. It's something that's actually desirable if you think about it, if you die for the bigger cause of the Russian Federation, right?
Yeah.
And then they invite veterans who speak to young children, 13, 14, and tell them, oh, yeah, life in the military is great and you have great benefits and there's nothing better in the world than becoming a soldier. By the way, here's a document that in X years you will have to go to the military. I'm not sure if that happens in the US, for example.
No, we don't have conscription in that sense, but we all have to register for the draft.
Right, but
which is
you know what I mean when I
various
say
ways.
this sort of indoctrination
No,
into
yeah.
the military, right? And there's
No, very much. It's the thing, what tends to happen is around the age of 15, 14, 15, it happens a bit earlier depending on location. But you start having in high schools what's called ROTC. ROTC is basically, an armed forces wing that recruits younger people, and it becomes like basically it looks good on college applications, but it also is a way that people sort of begin their military officer career a little bit early and join that in order to sort of jump ahead. It happened pretty quick. And I think post, 2007, 2008, there have been a lot of shifts in how the military does what they do. It's a fascinating thing here, actually, because for a very long time, poverty was basically the thing that they went after. So you find a lot of Army, Marine, Navy, Air Force recruitment inside of very, very depressed populations, high schools that were poor. But you saw like specifically Air Force actually in like higher end, wealthier areas, because that's the position. When I was in Colorado, we had the Air Force Academy just south of us. It's a very different beast, white Christian, very racist, very sexist organization overall. At least it was, maybe not anymore, probably still. So it's like a fast sort of, sorry, go ahead.
No, but I'm saying this because Russia has these specific paramilitary organizations that children can join in order to sort of learn, train into becoming soldiers in the future. One of the most prominent ones is UNARMIA, which is actually pretty openly by the media compared to the Hitlerjugend organization. Like it's basically a nationwide endorsed sort of this org that sort of trains kids in the ways of the military. There's a ton of money pumped into it. There are celebrities that sort of hype it up as this great thing that children should do to become soldiers in the future. There are politicians that sort of talk to the children, veterans, sports people, etc.
They do an extraordinary amount of deep fascist state building, and it's been the case for. I mean, this is again pre-Putin. It's a thing that's been around for a very long time.
And it's like when I talk about that, and basically someone reacts, "Oh yeah, well, everybody does it." Oh no, not everybody does it. Like the equivalent of UNARMIA is not something that everybody does. Like, and saying that in Ukraine, a single unit as of possibly has camps for children is something that is, in my opinion, not of comparable scale.
No, but you're giving specifics. Like, so again, this is where the difficulty in the way things work in language is that all major countries do this. They do. Now, the specifics of and the way that it goes about is drastically different. Drastically.
Yes, that is what I'm saying.
Right, but they are, again, in America, for example, we have church camps that are extremely, extremely what you might call patriotic, that have guns, that teach kids that God and country are the only things, that really train them to do, like, this happens. This happens.
Yeah, but like, it's not as sort of systemic and nationwide. There's no federal sort of organized, one big organization that encompasses the entirety of the US that recruits hundreds of thousands of children countrywide into, the formation of the future army.
Hundreds of thousands?
Yeah, UNARMIA does get hundreds of thousands, yeah.
I'd have to learn more about it. I didn't know it was quite that widespread.
UNARMIA is such a great success that countries that are allied with Russia sort of started adopting the model. What is it?
And send me a link or two.
Yeah, I will. Let me see. Even I think like it's a huge thing. Let me see. between the themes, usually has a moment. Yeah. Wikipedia does not have the information. Unfortunately. But it's a pretty big thing. It started in 2015, 9 years ago.
I'd have to read up kind of at length at it because, again, if we're talking about, again, different, sure, but the evangelical Christian camp system of the American Central, Mountain, and Midwest, you're talking about 50, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 kids who are absolutely brought up in what is an absolutely extremist, like nightmare setting, the kind who end up being, God's soldiers. There's a handful of great books on how they specifically have, especially white supremacist organizations, have a sort of inroad very particularly into the military in the United States, and how the United States military has a massive problem because what people are doing is basically having their kids that are part of these military religious organizations join the military, learn how to do all this stuff, and then leave and become effectively anti-government or anti-democrat, I guess you could say, because they love the trumpet. But it's a I don't know how to put it. Hey, let me pull back because, again, I think the specifics are less part of the point. To go back to, again, with Ukraine, for example, or how everyone does a thing, it's not necessarily saying that it's okay that Russia does it because everyone does a thing. That's, I think, the point. Instead, step back and go, okay, yes, everyone does a thing. Here is specifically how the machinations of what Russia does reinforce the overall sort of setup of a militaristic, aggressive, fascistic form.
Yeah.
Again,
of course, there's the whole, there's the, well, not to the same extent. Right?
I think that's I think kind of the thing that it came out tougher yesterday, and it came out, and I think you specifically were coming at it from, look, it's not worth comparing because what Russia's doing. They're the aggressor. They're the one creating a lot of this.
Yes.
In a lot of the same way, if one says America invades this country, it's like, well, every country invades country. Like, yeah, but not like this. Like, that's the point.
Yeah.
Every country has this type of racism. Yeah, but ours codified in these 3 or 4 ways.
Exactly.
And so it's again,
like I made a really big example, but I said that basically it's like saying, because I use the term incomparable, and when I say incomparable, I don't mean literally that you cannot compare these things. Of course, you can compare these things, right? But what I'm saying is that one of these 2 things is on a different scale. And the example that I gave is like, it would be like saying, yes, the Nazis might have committed the Holocaust, but you know what? Pogroms and anti-Semitism has been all over Europe, so basically everybody does it.
Well, I mean, and this is where I think the interesting discussion, it's, I went through severe personal trauma. A lot of people have, actually. And you get these moments where people who introduce, we talk about our trauma, someone kind of comes out, I don't feel like as a trauma Olympics, because it's not the intention, but you're talking about stuff that people who, like what you went through is worse than them, or what you went through is worse than them. There's an immediate comparison about the size of trauma. But the challenge is that size of trauma doesn't exist actually for me or for them. Like, it's not, the scale doesn't shift. Trauma tends to be trauma. There's just differences in how it's sort of visited and how it's experienced. So even comparing scale of something like this is...
Yes. Yes, I understand that point, yeah.
It becomes difficult because you're talking about kind of like, on the individual level, and this is where I have a lot of friends in Ukraine. I 100% back Ukraine, and I say that up front because I have to, because of what I'm about to say. I don't like, it doesn't feel good to me that people are being conscripted, and they're people that I know and people I care about. I'm not happy about that. I think it is a bad thing. Now, I'm not putting it on the person doing the conscripting, unless they tend to be really violent about it. There are times where I think that's gross on any side. But it is on Russia. They're the aggressor.
Yes.
They're the shitty people.
And of course, there's the aspect. There is a really very real social conflict between the conscription officers, who apparently are not that great about things, and wider society. But I believe that the attitude of people is, I don't want to be conscripted. But when push comes to shove, I will do it because I have to defend my country and the people that I care about.
Well, most people I know a lot of people I know are going to be really hated by people, but a lot of them ran. I know 4 or 5 Ukrainians who just went, fuck it, and they're out. And I get it. I do. I do. And they're going to deal with a lot of sort of personal guilt and a lot of things. I get every side of that. I get the Russians who are conscripted and then surrender to the Ukrainians immediately upon being seen. It's what we saw in the Iraq War. Actually, a lot of Iraqis surrendering to Americans because they knew the surrendering to Americans, they'd be treated better than if they went back after not killing a bunch of Americans winning. So there's a weird reality to how awful war is. The challenge becomes that what I would say, and it's why these conversations are difficult but necessary. To me, conscription is a thing that should be talked about as though it's disgusting and hateful. In the same way, there's an old Taoist saying about weapons that man should never celebrate a weapon that can kill a man. And it's not saying you shouldn't have them. That's not what they're saying. But that you shouldn't celebrate it.
Right.
And so when you get to a lot of these discussions, there should be a look. This is the morose thing. This is the bad thing. We have to do a bad thing. We don't know of another way out. We are between a rock and a hard place. This is the reaction. This is the direction the explosion is generated. And it's not a thing anyone should celebrate. And it's not a thing that we should ever do anything but curse. But to understand the material conditions that produced it and to know where those things sit is what makes us, to me, leftists, which is about emancipatory universal politics.
Right, because I find this agreeable. When I sort of start having a problem is when I hear stuff like, Ukraine is just bad because it does conscription, and that's just bad because it should be not happen at all in this situation that we're talking about. And then I just have to ask, okay, so what's the alternative? Just letting Russia mass kill people?
I would say, and that's, I think, when it sounds like, and this is, again, the reason these conversations are tough, when it sounds like they are trying to minimize the pain that Ukraine's feeling, or balancing it out, or saying that Ukraine is the one at fault. Some are, don't get me wrong, some are, no, not all, for sure not all. And on the other side, when it sounds like you're defending Ukraine, or someone else defending Russia, this is I think where the conversation goes bad, because it starts becoming purely opinion based rather than sort of falling back into where there's something that I think is real, which is would the answer I would today would Ukraine be conscripting if Russia didn't? That's it. That's the only question.
Probably not.
I think it's a very safe bet because they weren't fucking conscripting before that.
Yeah.
And so that's it. It's where are the material realities and where are the conditions being affected and who is in power to change them?
Right. And still there's it's a problem on both sides, of course. The mass conscription, Russia's trying to, of course, avoid conscripting Russians on every turn, tries to more rely on prisoners, foreigners, etc. There's a political reason for that as well. Ukraine, of course, is having its own demographic crisis, so it tries to avoid conscripting people of certain age. That has been also a pretty big thing. Of certain young age, that is.
Yeah. And but there, and again, so what's causing all of these things? And at the base, this is where you can start talking about like the material conditions that produce it. And really what we're talking about between Russia and Ukraine, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, is the very unique oligarchic capitalist extraction required by Russia's capitalist class in order to maintain their power and maintain the structure of the society that they live in. It's a very unique thing over the last 24 or 5 years that Russia has had that they need to consistently extract from elsewhere. It's actually the same reason that Germany had to do what it did with Austria. Now, they didn't have to. They could have changed their economic system to not be so extractive and not be so.
And then they had to go to war as well.
Correct. And so this is where you start running into, okay, so how, like, what are the ways people can go about this? What's the thing? And at the base, where is it? It's not the Russian people. Like, again, I don't believe it's the Russian people. I believe this is...
Well, I believe it's sort of the political climate that has been created around them and that they ended up partaking in.
Yes, by the oligarchic capitalist class who basically maintain power through brutally fascistic means internally.
In my opinion, is not looking to be so easily undone.
No, it's not going to be easy to undo. It is not just kill Putin and we're good. That is not how that works.
Yeah.
Just honestly, as for Putin, it's not like kill Zelensky and Ukraine crumbles. That is not how these things work.
Yeah. I mean, of course, certain things like we had Nazi Germany and certain sort of culture was able to be shifted when it comes to Germany. But I guess we'd still have the maniacal fringes like the AFD, but you know about the AFD, right? Alternative für Deutschland Party.
Yes.
Right. But the other topic that sort of generated tension was the topic of the prisoner conscription by both sides, which again I said that the methods of both parties are, in my opinion, night and day. How it's being done, etc.
Well, yeah, and it's making what I would say are very strange bedfellows, because the way that, for example, there's poetry to the world in a really awful way, where the far right German AfD party is basically reaching out to and getting a lot of ex-Israelis or current Israelis who have left Israel since October 7th, and in the wake of October 7th, a ton have gone to Germany, and they're applying for citizenship there, and they're backing the far right.
Yeah, the AfD that basically says Germany should be friendlier to its Nazi past.
Which is, like, when you just consider that, it's kind of like the position we're in is right wing knows right wing. Like, they find each other. They know this.
And of course, one of the most famous sayings that the AfD person said was, actually, Eastern Germany is factually Central Germany, which you know what that implies.
Oh, good Lord. They are fascinating, man. They are fascinating. God damn it.
Yeah. I also added that cities in Poland, she just refuses to use the Polish names, she uses the German ones. And of course, the far right from Poland cooperated with that party, so that's again sort of like with the Israelis.
Amazing.
Yeah. But with the conscription, on both sides, there are very big, clear differences, which makes, in my opinion, it's just a different type of scale, a different type of project on both sides. In the case of Ukraine, there's a very strict limit on which sort of convicts are allowed into the military. Unlike in Russia, Russia lets basically anybody in, murderers, rapists, and then lets them loose after in Russia, and they do their thing. And in Ukraine, that just does not happen. There's a limit on that. And there's the obvious difference that the prisoners in Ukraine are offered to defend the country from an invasion, and the Russian convicts are thrown into an invasion as invaders, right? That's also a difference.
Yep.
And also the biggest difference is that the Russian has something called the special contingent, and that is, you take those convicts, you basically throw them first into the front line as like the canaries in a coal mine. Their main task is to sniff out enemy positions, so they basically are tasked to die as the first wave. They're the so-called meat waves, to pave the way for the real guys to come in and fight, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're the special contingent. That's their role, to go in and basically die, but when they die, they sort of uncover enemy positions and all the logistical points that the real guys with experience and know-how go in and take advantage of. That's the strategy, and that just does not happen with Ukraine. There's no special convict contingent that is who is disposable and whose role is just to be sent to die as the first wave of assault. And that is a huge difference in my mind.
I think, again, so just to go back, and because I've got to bounce, I've got work I need to get to, and some code I've got to write, I've got deadlines. But I want to talk because, so that one of the things, it's the last thing, is when we have passion about things, and you're like me in this sense, like a lot of people, we care about these things in a deeply, like, personally affecting way.
Yeah.
It's really tough as you talk to not allow that to feel or come across to other people as though you're condemning them, as you're insulting them, as though you're going after them and not the idea. Because again, the emotion breeds a lot of that in a person who's listening. It doesn't even matter the language you use, really.
Yeah.
I was laughing yesterday in Sunday server because someone made a comment about how I'm like, apparently Brooks only believe that art that's profound is good and everything else is trash, and like it's literally nothing I've ever said.
Profound is pretty subjective. Anything can be profound to someone.
Right. I mean, we've talked about games, and I may have made a joke or two that I think a game is trash, but I'm very open that I like garbage too, and I have my own, and that it's like I find it fascinating. But again, because I have my tone of like directness, seeming confidence, blah blah blah, whatever it may be, I'm taken as arrogant. I'm taken as this particular thing that this person is associating with others who seem to have those things. So it's really tough. It's just the thing to be aware of when we're talking, especially as you get more viewers, as you talk about these things more. It makes us and you more effective in defending the things we actually care about, rather than getting into emotional entanglements that are, as this one was, simply misunderstandings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so.
That's all.
I mean, I did think it was probably a miscommunication.
For sure. And I'm going to ask you a last thing. Watch the documentary Jesus Camp.
Jesus Camp?
Jesus Camp. I'll send you a link.
Okay.
It is
it's
a big documentary from like 2005, I want to say, on these hyper-religious camps that since then have become a lot more terrifying, actually. A lot more terrifying.
I watched that documentary today, by the way, before you go, about a singer. The documentary is called The Nomi Song Main Feature. The Nomi Song. Klaus, about the, Klaus Nomi. You know Klaus Nomi? The singer?
Not understanding.
You know Klaus Nomi, the singer?
No.
Was like
Not off the top of
died
my head.
very early into the AIDS pandemic when it was like not known what it was. And he had this very big concert. He knew he was dying and he sort of did his best and he did a big performance. And instead of having a bright future ahead of him, he just died.
Interesting. Send me a link.
Yes.
I sent
Was
you a link.
seen as
It's a
very
movie.
eccentric.
It's a movie.
Yes. Oh, Jesus Campbell. And in turn, I'm going to send you the...
And what's great is you'll get to the point. When this released, it was right before, but there's a preacher in the middle of the film who's focused on family. His name's Ted Haggard. And I have to tell you the story beforehand because it'll make the moment so much better, especially as he talks about it. But he's like, he believes Jesus Camp's the best thing. He's pushing it. He was an evangelical preacher that was genuinely famous across the world, like worth just extraordinary sums of money. And advised President Bush, like that kind of shit. And he was having lots and lots of meth-fueled gay sex with a prostitute. And I have Ted Haggard's autobiography signed by the prostitute, by the sex worker. When you get to it, what he talks about and when he says things like to the camera, he goes, "What do you do at night? God knows. God, it's the weirdest fucking thing to watch." And they didn't even know, like no one knew at the time that this was the case, but we know now that night, we know what he was doing. And it turns out God did know, and he let all of us know.
True. And now I can watch it and appraise.
It's a fascinating documentary, but it's a real thing. So when we talk about and this is my money because religion being as tied in as it is in Russia, from the people I know who have family there still, religion has become much more central to Russian life over the last 20 years than it used to be. It was very secular, and then the transfer of that, it's very in line with American evangelicals, and it's kind of incredible.
The Russian Orthodox Church. There's a new law that basically will fine people who openly say they don't want children. And the Russian Orthodox Church sort of intervened to make exceptions in that law for monks and priests.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah.
Good fucking Lord.
Might be talking about it today. So that might be interesting.
Enjoy it.
Enjoy it. Wow.
It's been fun. Enjoy the documentary.
Yeah. Well, I'll probably watch it I will try to rope in one other person to watch it with me, probably.
Good. And enjoy the rescues and the dogs. Be safe.
I'll do my best.
Be safe.
No promises. No, I'll try.
I mean,
it's safe here in Kyiv, but maybe I'll
you'll
try
do your
to.
best.
I will do my best.
You do your best. Thank you, Lucy, and take care of yourself.
Okay, thank you. I'll see you. All right, so how was that? Hello, Snare Mori. I can now go back to paying attention to the chat. So how was that? What did you think? Did you think that was heated? Did you think that was informative? Did you like what you just saw? What did you think of the conversation? Did it clear up anything? Did it just create more confusion? Confucius?